graduated, elevated. Now it's my time to shine, yeah, let's go. Major moves, power moves, take it to the top one time, non-stop.
I guess the question then becomes, how do you feel right when you've been so wrong for a long time? How do you know that this is right?
Yeah, but it's politics. I think it's all about power and accumulation. And we know how African politics is like. It's self-aggrandizement and nothing really major about service to the people. If you look at the scandals that especially the leaders got involved in soon after independence, or especially liberation movements, the things that they did to their countries, you look even some notable leaders who could possibly be said to be founding fathers of some nations. Mugabe's genocide, you look at other countries, in Zaire, Mobutu Sese Seko probably was richer than the country because he was looting. You go to Nigeria, the likes of Abacha were looting from the state coffers, and this happened all over the continent. So we need new leaders and new parties. Maybe they can be of assistance to finding truth and delivering justice. But the old guard, especially the liberation movements, I think their duty was to liberate and not take us any further, because our liberators became our post-colonial oppressors at the end of the day, and some of which are still are today, And you look at Africa, Africa is probably the youngest continent in terms of the number, the young population, people younger than 40, they are almost 70% or so. But if you look at leaders in Africa, most of them are supposed to be in old age homes or in retirement, but they are still they are still running countries, and some of them are clueless, if I to be genuine about what they are doing anyway.
That's a mouthful.
I sound like hopeless, right? Of which I am. Of which I think I am. By the way, the frustrations really are too much that we have to go through, and this happens. Sorry for taking long. This happens, especially when you travel and get experiences in other places, in other countries. Some of the things that people do, for instance, involvement in crime and stuff that people do. I'm not saying that there are no criminals or people involved in crime in other countries, but I feel like in some cases in our continent, it's because of terrible experiences delivered to us by our politicians, lack of jobs, decent living conditions. There are people who live in shacks, in tin shacks. People don't have proper toilets. With children are dying in some pit latrines, in toilets in some of our countries, and people are dying of cholera. Things that should not be happening in this day and age are happening, right? So people are desperate and despondent, and they get involved in some of dehumanizing activities to earn a living. So it's really a struggle for us, and it's really sort of painful, right? You can say I'm an academic, I'm middle class and stuff. Definitely I should be fine, but it cannot be, right? Because of where I come from and the experience of a homeless person, and I identify with that, right? Because of my past and all those kinds of things. So I wouldn't want, if I had a voice, to neglect speaking on behalf of those people, right?
No, that was quite insightful, and I think the biggest take, I think the sadness is the fact that, for example, I did some research in terms of the DRC, and I realized it's like one of the richest countries, and if you look at the state of the country, it's quite shocking. But you've got millionaires there, you've got people living comfortably well, just not that far away from squatter camps and, you know, all this stuff. So no, I do take that on board, and thank you very much for sharing. So to move on to your tweet. So you tweeted this, I don't know if you remember, but I'll read it out and then I will break it down to questions. So the first part is, I just rejected a paper with a 6-word sentence as a response to the author. Universities must consider stopping wasting reviewers' time by stopping this thing of saying PhD students won't graduate till they publish a chapter or a journal article. We get a lot of unbaked stuff. Now that's a mouthful. So I guess the first part is, you know, you just rejected a paper. You're covering your face. The 6-word sentence. So what is the issue? It's a 6-word sentence. What's the problem?
No, so my response was just a sentence with 6 words to the article. Well, I don't know whether it was coming from a student or not, but
could have been a professor. I'm joking.
No, there is a professor. There is a professor who is actually capable of doing that, of writing such.
We won't name names.
We won't name him here because. Yeah, but there are some universities I've heard who want students to write journal articles so that they can graduate. You might as well finish writing your PhD dissertation and stuff. Mm-hmm. But they won't accept it unless you've published or something along those lines. So I was talking to one journal editor some long time back, and you know, some articles that are submitted are rejected at desk level, like desk rejection, right? You know what that is?
Yes. You can explain it to the audience. Desk rejection. We get a lot of those, some of us.
It's
not you, but share.
I thought you'd explain with them in text. So what happens when an editor gets an article and they think this article is not ready for review, or is poorly written, or doesn't belong to this journal? They just reject it and write to the author and not pass it on for review, right? But I guess sometimes they get a lot of articles and then might possibly pass them over for review without going through them. And I usually say to my students that writing is rewriting, right? You cannot submit anything that you have written once and not gone over it 3-4 times to a journal and stuff. And when I read that article, I felt like it was just a first draft. Well, it was poorly done, really. Which, you know, you put up time to review people's work, and you try to be graceful, generous, and teaching is humanly possible, right? But if from the title you're confronted by a mistake, the abstract mistake, every other line, and you go through, you know, after setting your time, you have an option, really, or you have many options to provide some, take that as a teaching moment and try to point to the author in a nice way and stuff. But if the risk is for you to write a paper which is longer than what is submitted to you, just you're trying to teach somebody, then it's a huge problem. And then secondly, you can tell supervisors are supposed to, or expected to, or should try and assist their students, because if it's part of graduation, possibly it should be part of supervision to help the student to write that article. But you can sense that the supervisor was absent here, you know, and for me, really, to avoid a damaging review, you just say, no, I think this paper is not ready for publication. And just write to the editor on the side, because when you're submitting a review, there's a space you write specifically to the editor, and the author won't see what you wrote to the editor. You know, so it's very painful, and I must confess that when I was starting up as an academic, I received some terrible reviews, literally terrible reviews that I will never give to anyone, right? And you have to have a thick skin, really. You have a thick skin, and I have experienced some people who don't. So we try as much as possible, at least myself, like if there's something that can be salvaged from the article, I'll try and engage and show you. But if there's nothing that can be salvaged, then unfortunately, I'll just give
wow.
it.
I mean, do you know what it is? Thank you so much for your response, because I hold sometimes PhD hard talk spaces on Twitter, and you have this question where you've got students who are doing their masters and they've published and they think, you know, they are already soaring on high, and they tell you all these wonderful things about their first year. You're like, slow down. Baby steps. So it's really great for you to literally go through it in terms of what the reviewer sees, because also there is a big jump into it from masters to PhD research, and also how you write. And I think there is a misconception there, because we're taught to publish, you know, at master's level, and then we get to this point and then we try and publish by ourselves without our supervisors. But I'll get to that question later. So in your opinion, do you think for these universities then, the supervisors need to co-publish, co-author with the students to make it better, instead of wasting people's time, essentially?
I don't know.
I mean, what do you think would work best?
I don't know what the rule is in terms of co-publishing and stuff. I don't know whether it's supposed to be the student's name on the paper or whatever the case is. But for me, it's important that they sort of co-publish, so that it's also a training moment, right? If you're not trained through writing your PhD, then even post PhD, or from the PhD, publishing from the PhD, you don't just get a chapter 4 of your PhD and send it to a journal for publishing. No, definitely not. Your chapter might be even 40, 60 pages, right? But what's important maybe for publication in a journal article may come out of maybe 3 or 4 pages, which needs to be reworked, expanded, and trashed out and stuff. So I don't know the expectations of the universities, but for me at least, supervisors must be asked to, or should be asked to, co-author with the students as part of mentorship outside the PhD project. Yeah.
So for the next tweet, right, I've got this tweet and I think it's really, really interesting. So I'll read it to you. A plug to those who outsourced the writing of their PhDs and are finding writing academic papers and book chapters hard. Go to the DHET list, look for the Turkish-based journals, or I think it's Egyptian, I don't know, journals, regardless of your field. Just send anything to those journals and literally they will publish you. End quote. So, to those who outsourced, what does that even mean?
You know that globally. And this, by the way, if you check on Google, in Kenya there is is it called a paper mill or something like that? where students in the West, especially the UK and in Americas and stuff, they will ask some guys in Kenya to write school essays for them, and then they will pay, you know. And I guess this happens across many different countries and continents and all that. So people can ask some people to write for them, and we have scandals here and there of people having their PhDs written for them. So, but that was said in jest as a warning that, you know, don't do it. Don't do it.
It sounded as if you were encouraging them to actually get their papers done and sent to the Turkish based journals. That's what he came across as.
Yeah.
To me, the reader.
It's like there are those sites where you can get papers, what do you call, or even books where you can download books and download papers without paying. You know, some are getting blocked every now and then. As a lecturer, sometimes I'll just tell my class, please don't use these sites to download papers for you. Don't use these free sites to download papers. If you can't get a paper, please don't visit these sites. I give them the sites and stuff. So, look, I struggle to get my own papers that I've published. If maybe I'm somewhere traveling or whatever, I Google my paper, I try to download it. There's a paywall. I have to pay for my own paper, right? But there are so-called illegal sites where the publishing industry has told us these are illegal, pirated. I go there, I can get my paper that I've published, right? But again, there are some journals that do these kinds of things that should be avoided by any serious scholar. So if you want to grow your CV properly, if you want to maintain your credibility or even grow it, then you should avoid what I was saying in that tweet. First, don't outsource the writing of your dissertation. And secondly, avoid. There are certain journals that publish papers on literature, but they are chemistry journals or physics journals or mathematics journals, right? And people are publishing there. You find somebody publishing 30, 20 papers, or even in one particular case, I'm not going to name I can give you the name outside the conversation. In one particular case, I know I've seen some people publishing 3 papers in one issue of it, right? So very problematic, but people are doing it. People are doing it. And these things are done for various things like promotion and stuff, you know. Across the continent, for people to be promoted, they have to have, indeed globally, they have to have a certain number of publications and stuff. But I guess sometimes vetting also might be a problem. The vetting of these papers might be a problem. You know, is there a committee that sees to assess if you're applying for a job as a junior lecturer, and then you say, I've published in these journals? Do they check and say, oh, but these ones are not, these ones are not, these ones are not good? You know, we've had one case globally of a certain journal that was actually exposed for not due diligence. But what was happening is, if I write a paper, I send it over to them, they accept it, I have to pay page fees. So for them, what was important wasn't the rigor of peer review, but what was important was the money that was coming through. Yeah.
No, that's quite interesting, and I think something that's just popped up recently, I don't know if you've seen it on Twitter, is the professor from a really good university who manipulated the data, you know, to get his paper out there. And unfortunately, the paper has to be pulled down. So there are repercussions for trying to manipulate the system. Like you said, it's all educational. It's up to you if you take it on board or you choose not to. So just to round off, really, in terms of where we're going, I know that you're really active on Twitter in terms of publications. How do you think you're giving back to the PhD community? I mean, going past these 2 tweets, how do you think you're benefiting the PhD community?
Well, I'm not really. I try to be deliberate in terms of helping, but people are thankless. I saw somebody who graduated with a PhD, whom I helped when she was crying, literally crying, asking for help, calling at night and all that. When she graduated, she never even told me that she was graduating. I just saw pictures on Facebook.
First of all, I need to meet your wife and shake her hands, because why is she calling at night and crying down your phone? I need to talk to your wife because she is calm. I'll be popping off. Hello. But that's my opinion. In terms of being a reviewer for journals, then, you know, you've touched on this. Do you think, in your opinion, that has helped you to publish more because you're set on the other side and you're getting to see these papers, whether good, bad, and ugly, and you're giving this feedback, like you said? Sometimes you feel like it's not worth it, so I'll just write a sentence, and sometimes you write a bit more because you can see that there's potential. In your opinion, for somebody who's doing their PhD, who's thinking maybe I should review a few papers to get some experience, do you think that's the right path to take?
Not really. I think for me, what helped me to, I don't know if I'm a good writer.
Well, you're called, is it Prof, Babeswear Publication? Hello.
So in my experience, and this is my story, I believe that I got sort of good mentorship, and sometimes you get mentored through observing others without them really interacting with you. So and also the training that I went through when I was at Wits for my PhD, would go for writing retreats, right? And there's a reader who goes with you there, who reads your stuff. When I was doing my PhD, I was within this community of PhD scholars. I think we're like, in our PhD lab, there was like 20 people or so. And there were some guys who would be generous enough to read your drafts, right? Mm-hmm. And then when I did my postdoc at UJ again, there were people like Prof Mets who would be generous enough to sponsor our writing retreats, and you know, just going out there to write and rewrite and stuff. And so for me, that training, and also when I was at Wits, there used to be seminars on writing. So this is where the larger chunk of my training came from. I never reviewed anything when I was a PhD student. And I'm wondering whether a PhD student should actually be involved in reviewing journals. I think they shouldn't. This is my thinking. They should just write. They should just write their PhD and finish their PhD, and then engage in peer review later on. I'm not saying that they are not going to do a better or good job, but and again, I don't know if peer review will help you to write better, but receiving feedback from peer review, definitely. That's the most painful part, but that also sort of helps you to improve. You know, you get rejections, you get acceptances. I think it boosts your ego when you get a paper accepted, especially when you're starting out. I don't know, when you're used to writing, what happens when you get accepted. It becomes, oh, those normal things. Or when you get rejected, it becomes, oh, I'll send it to another journal.
It is what,
you know.
Oh no, you should never take the feedback. But that's my opinion.
There's some feedback that you really have to ignore. right? And also stand your ground. And also stand your ground. And
But that's when you're a confident writer, though, because you can stand your ground when you're wrong. So I think, you know, going back to what you said, where there's someone else to read the work and read the feedback and you have a discussion, I think.
yeah, there's an interesting paper that I wrote on Jacob Zuma's art and racism in South Africa.
Okay.
Where the reviewer wrote, I do not disagree with the author, but I found these arguments convincing enough. And they accepted that the paper be published, right? Even though they didn't agree. They claimed that they were convinced with the way that I laid my arguments. So that's what I'm saying, that if you have to stand your ground, if, right, you believe this is the what your data says, or this is what you believe in, this is what you've experienced, this is what you have seen, right? Someone will try to underplay and try to downplay and stuff, but you can still stand your ground. But you cannot stand your ground on things that are nonsense.